Remember that baby?
No, I don't.
That baby was so cute. We need to go back on the campaign trail so I can...
A lot of babies out there I don't remember. I'm joking! The Mick Jagger of the morning show world right now. What are you going to do?
Oh, you remember that
That's a
little
loaded
guy.
question. You remember that baby? No, I don't remember that one. What was that, Hamburg 64? No.
You remember the baby we had on the
61?
set that was transfixed by everything you had to say?
No.
Yes, it was
That was
so cute.
That was 2012. It was the summer of love. I don't remember many things from
Whose
there.
was it? Anyhow, here with us now, contributing editor, New York
so long
Magazine,
ago, 2012.
Jennifer Senior. Remember Detroit?
No.
Oh, the author of All Joy and No Fun: The Paradox of Modern Parenthood. I want to get into the title, but first, guilt. And by the way, can we talk about Joe for a second?
Oh no.
Because, okay, so we work an early shift, right?
Yeah.
We get up at 3, home by 11. I call about the show. He's driving his kid to tennis. He's driving his daughter home from school.
Oh, my
He's
God.
watching Ninjago. He's watching SpongeBob.
Always watching
He spends
Ninjago
like
with him.
7 hours. Why? Why does he need to do that?
Yeah.
It's too much.
It's way too much.
They have too much access to him. And
I don't need this lecture on national TV.
It's not a lecture. It's an indirect compliment, though, right?
So
Obviously.
what am I doing
I mean, the
wrong?
full saturation, immersion parenting thing. Like, I mean, kudos to
And
you
then
for
they don't
doing
go to bed on time. They're up late watching TV with him.
because you feel bad about not seeing them. Okay, number one.
But I see
it's
them all the
terrific-
time.
You say them too much.
It's terrific that men feel that way. There are two things that I can describe here. One, something we talked about a little bit last time.
Yes, please.
That the family has become a filiarchy, meaning
Yes.
that kids are at the top of the heap.
Yes.
Ever since they lost their productive function, they used to work for us. Not anymore.
Yes.
Right. So they used to work.
I
And this is
believe
really.
You talk about the inverted pyramid.
I did talk about this. No, literally until 1940, only half of kids, I said this the last time, only half of all American kids graduated from high school. They were working for us throughout the history of this
That's
country.
correct.
And they liked it.
No, but I mean,
It
sorry.
finally
Go
made
ahead.
rational economic sense.
Yeah,
I mean,
it
there was at least something economically rational. You did something for them, and they kicked something back in. What's
Right.
strange is that now their new work is your new work. It's driving them to soccer. That's their work. It's going over their homework and going to Kumon and all
how
that.
about vacation decisions?
Can I ask that question?
Yes.
My little girl doesn't
she
like
calls
a
the
certain
shots.
place, and so we're not going to go there.
What's that?
I'm just saying. Go ahead. Guilt.
Guilt. But can I tell you something else about all the things you're doing on behalf of your kid? It was much easier when we raised our kids to be like us. If they inherited our farm, it was easy peasy. They knew what they were doing. You are now completely uncertain about what you're doing for your kid. You don't know what your kid's futures are going to be. So because, you know what I mean? I mean, I don't know the name of the job title that my kid is going to have.
Right.
So what you're doing is raising your kids for every possible future, because you don't know what specific future they're going to, be a part of. I mean, can you imagine like Sergey Brin and Larry Page being like, "Hey, Mom, I'm going to find."
So let me ask.
what do we do?
Let me ask this. It's weird that
Yeah.
being a parent, and I've got 4 kids, but it's strange these days. Sometimes the parents that others would go, "Oh gosh, they're so tough with their kids," where they basically treat them the way our parents treated us.
Right.
On one hand, other parents are going, "Oh, they're not spending enough time with their children," but on the other hand, you sit there and go, "Wait a second, are they doing it the right way by not letting their children dominate every second of their lives?"
Yeah, the "because I said so" model has kind of gone out the window. The idea that we could possibly utter to our children, "Look, this isn't a democracy. I'm still the boss here," has completely, I think, just been chucked away. And again, I would go
Why?
back. Well, the new theory about if you are middle class and you are college educated is that the way you prepare your kids for the world is that when they ask you a question, you don't respond with a directive. You respond with another question. Well, what do you think of that? Well, and on the one hand, I guess that's a nice thing in that it tells kids that, look, no institution is too difficult for them to navigate. No environment is too challenging. On the other hand, how realistic is that? But the reason, again, I'm going back to this idea, this is an ahistorical moment. We didn't used to sit there and cater to our children as if we were their valets.
You know what the amazing thing is?
Yeah.
It doesn't make them love you anymore.
No.
It
Then
does.
That's
I
the
love.
heartbreak.
Then I loved my dad. No,
That's
no,
the
I'm
heartbreak.
dead
That's
serious. I'm not
exactly
trying to be
right.
funny here. Sometimes
No.
Sometimes when there is so much immersion, actually it breeds contempt. And I'm not talking about my kids. My kids all love me. But
No contempt there.
but you know, my dad went to work.
That.
He came home. You know, he coached baseball on the weekends.
Right.
We didn't spend a whole lot of, hey, how are you, Dad? But I love him every bit as much. I loved him every bit as much as my children love me, and my children love me a lot.
So Annette LaRue, a sociologist who writes about this in Unequal Childhoods is the name of her book, she points this very fact out, that the very habits that we are encouraging in our kids to challenge, to feel like that they can penetrate any hierarchy, that they can navigate any institution, means they can also challenge your authority, and they can hold you in contempt. They can negotiate with the teacher, they can negotiate with you. It's hard. It's hard on parents. And it's especially hard if you've sacrificed all of these hours. As you're saying, your father had some distance. He came home and he wasn't aloof.
He worked.
He worked. And his love for you, I'm sure, ran in the background, right? Like it was mutely running there. You had no question about that.
No question at all.
And now there's this kind of strange thing where we feel like if we are not at every moment establishing our bona fides as like loving people, something about, and I'll tell you something else, and I wonder if this has an effect because of what you do for a living. You are constantly working. You come home and you're still working. So you have the opportunity, because you're working all the time, to feel guilty all the time.
That's right.
Yeah.
And he does.
That's true. But isn't it also the fact that life as in America has changed? I mean, given technology and all. I mean,
oh, my God,
we're in an era now. When I was growing up, my mother raised me. I would depend on her for all the information.
Totally.
When my kids were growing up, they could Google up the answer, and they were almost testing me to see if I knew the right answer. It's a different world.
Not only that, they're the house, like, IT guys and girls, right?
That's
You have
right.
to go to them. I mean, you're sitting there barking at them about screen time, but then you say, oh, and how do I put these parental controls in place? And can I friend you on Facebook so I can see what you're doing? I mean, the hierarchy is inverted in that way. So absolutely. Also, just going back to the guilt thing and technology for a second. So here's what I find so interesting. How many parents bring up email? Because here's what's, and their guilt surrounding email. You can be talking about anything and they will bring this up. Because we are now in this perverse position where we feel like our kids are interrupting us while we're doing our email, and not that our email is interrupting us while we're hanging out with our kids.
Right.
Because in some ways, it's easier to focus on your email.
Exactly.
Your email doesn't talk back. You can get into this kind of zone.
It's not hard.
It's not hard, and it's emotionally neutral.
Exactly.
Whereas your kids are these emotional disruptors. They're harder to think.
They're a challenge.
They're a challenge, and if they're younger, they're like insects with like eyes all over their heads. They're hard to focus, whereas email is extremely focused. So parents feel all this guilt that they're actually sitting there, you know, because it's easy, because it's controlable, and because neurologically.
But they should feel guilty about that, don't you think?
I mean, yes, I do. Yes. Well, I don't like.
Okay, hold on though. And by the way, I say this
I
as a guy that
I don't think they should feel guilty
If
about
you've
anything,
tried to
but
email me, you know I don't check my email much anymore because I'm actually trying to get away from it a lot, especially when I'm at home. I just don't do it. That said, for every kid that complains, I'll just say, about their parents being on email and being wired up to this, and these are the enemies of a lot of kids. I just say, would you rather them be in your presence, in your, you know, or would you rather them be in a factory downtown?
Of course.
Which they were in because they had to be there and communicate that way. Now, of course, there are a lot of parents that use this way too much around their kids, and it makes me, it really ticks me off.
You're right.
That said, though, you know, sometimes parents shouldn't feel guilty about being home with their kids instead of at work.
That's precisely the thing. Exactly. And I think that, no, you're right. Discipline, self-discipline, all a good thing. But considering the alternative, or the fact that maybe, you know, you're working less at the office, you're at the very least at home.
Right.
There are advantages to this stuff. But the other thing is, there has to be a consistent policy, because I don't know, I'm assuming you have teenage daughters.
Yes.
Don't you find them asleep at home with their, like, iPhones in their hands, or they're like, their faces are on their laptops in their beds and things?
I sometimes text them when I'm in the same room to get their attention. No, I'm serious.
I totally believe
You're
that.
going to need to come back.
We're Luddites.
We never got
when
to
it
the
comes
title.
to kids, technology is the enemy.
I am so clumsily low tech. I'm with you 100%.
I actually found a little key to my daughter's heart through text, and I'll tell you about that next time.
I would love to hear it.
Yeah,
Come back.
Okay. The book is all joy and no fun, although this has been fun, and we will talk about that title at some point.
It's fine.
Just come back. Jennifer Senior, thank you so much. Reverend Al, we'll see you on